The planet Veltharia Prime burned at the edges. From orbit, the great blue and green world looked like a wounded animal. Its planetary shields flickered with each passing second, fading from bright gold to a sickly yellow. Around it, the dark ships of the Krell Dominion gathered like hungry wolves around a dying deer. There were hundreds of them. Each one was a massive crystalline dreadnought, sharp and cold, glittering with weapons that could melt mountains into glass. Inside the highest tower of the capital city, Ambassador Felix Vorn stood at a tall window and watched his world die. He was a tall, thin creature with 4 delicate wings folded behind his back. His feathers had once been bright, shining in shades of blue and silver. Now they looked dull and tired. Felix was a skyborn, one of 6 species that lived together in peace on this world. His people had built cities in the clouds, sung songs to the wind, and trusted that the galaxy was a place where good civilizations helped each other. He had believed this his whole life. He did not believe it anymore. 3 billion souls were trapped on Veltharia Prime. 3 billion mothers, fathers, children, elders, scholars, and farmers. They had crowded into the capital and the surrounding shelters when the Krell fleet first appeared at the edge of their solar system 6 weeks ago. Now, there was nowhere left to run. The Krell ate worlds. They drank the life from oceans and ground forests into dust to feed their crystal bodies. Wherever they passed, only silence remained. Felix turned away from the window. Behind him, the great council chamber was nearly empty. Most of the leaders had already gone down to the deep bunkers. Only a few remained, standing around a glowing communication table that showed the live feed from the Galactic Concord meeting far across the stars. "Has there been any change?" Felix asked softly. A small avian elder named Mistress Kavari shook her head. Her old feathers trembled. "The vote was 11 against 1. The Concord will not come." Felix closed his eyes. He had spent the last 6 weeks begging the great civilizations of the galaxy for help. He had sent message after message. He had described the children in the shelters. He had played recordings of Krell broadcasts threatening total destruction. He had reminded the Concord of their own laws, their own promises, their own speeches about peace and unity. And in the end, 11 of the 12 great powers had voted to let his world die. The Sarek Republic had said the Krell were too strong. The Volnari Imperium had said helping would start a wider war. The Quilkai Federation had said it was sad, but not their problem. One after another, the wise old civilizations had calculated the cost of mercy and decided it was too high. Only one vote had been different. "The humans," Mistress Kavari said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. "They were the only ones who voted to help us." Felix gave a small, bitter sound that was almost a laugh. The humans. He had met one only once, at a diplomatic gathering on a neutral station. She had been a small creature with brown skin and dark eyes, and she had laughed too loudly at jokes and asked too many questions. The humans had only joined the Concord as observers 2 years ago. They had only been flying among the stars for 2 centuries. The other species treated them like clever children, useful for entertainment but not for serious matters. "Their vote means nothing," Felix said. "They have no fleet that could face the Krell. They have no allies. They are alone, just like us." Mistress Kavari was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Still, they voted to come." Felix did not answer. Outside the window, the planetary shield flickered again. 12% power, maybe less now. The Krell dreadnoughts were finishing their final movements, into firing position. In a few hours, perhaps less, the bombardment would begin. The shields would fail, the cities would burn, and then the Krell would land their harvesting machines and begin to drink the world dry. Felix walked slowly to the communication table. His 4 wings hung heavy on his back. He activated the broadcast system, and his image appeared on every screen, every public display, every personal device across the dying planet. He did not know what to say at first. He had prepared a speech, a careful one, full of brave words about courage and memory. But when he opened his beak, the careful words felt like ashes. "My people," he said simply. "I am sorry." He paused. He could feel 3 billion souls listening. I went to the great civilizations of the stars. I asked them to come. I told them about you. I told them about our cities and our songs and our children. I told them that we are good people and that we have done nothing wrong and that we deserve to live. His voice cracked. They are not coming. A long silence. Somewhere far below, in a shelter, a child began to cry. A mother began to sing. I want you to know, Felix continued, that you are not forgotten. Even if no one comes, even if every city falls, the stars themselves saw us. The wind remembers our songs. We were here. We loved each other. We built something beautiful. No fire, no weapon, no enemy can take that away from us. He lifted his head. To my fellow leaders, I say, do not despair. To the parents holding their children, I say, hold them tight. To the singers and the artists and the dreamers, I say, let your last songs be the bravest. We will not die in shame. We will die in dignity. He stopped. He could not say more. His throat was closed with grief. He shut down the broadcast and stood for a long moment, with his wings trembling. Then, far above the burning world, something strange happened. The deep space sensors caught a flicker, a single small reading at the edge of the system. The technicians at the Planetary Defense Center looked at it and frowned. It was probably nothing. A sensor error, a piece of debris, but the reading grew stronger. And then a second reading appeared beside it, and a third. In the council chamber, an alarm began to chirp softly. Felix turned, confused. Mistress Kavari was already at the sensor display, her old eyes wide. Ambassador, she whispered. Something is coming. Felix moved closer. The screen showed 3 small ships, far away, moving fast through the empty dark. They did not match any Concorde vessel design. They did not match any Krell vessel design. The signature was new. It was unknown. It was coming straight toward Veltharia Prime. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue world called Earth, a man stood in a dark room and read a report he did not like. His name was Ezra Kowalski. He was a fleet admiral of the Earth Navy, and he had served his world for 43 years. His face was lined and tired. His hair was gray. His eyes had been replaced long ago with cybernetic ones, after a battle accident, and they glowed a soft, pale blue in the darkness. He was old, and he was angry, and he had been angry for most of the last 6 weeks. The report on his desk was short. It said that the Galactic Concorde had voted not to help Veltharia Prime. It said that 3 billion people were going to die. It said that the great civilizations of the galaxy had calculated that mercy was too expensive. Kowalski set the report down. He stood for a long moment at the tall window of his office, looking out at the city of Geneva spread below. The lights of millions of homes glowed in the evening darkness. Children were eating dinner. Parents were telling stories. Old people were watching the stars and remembering their lives. He thought about all the times in human history when no one had come. He thought about the cities that had burned while the world watched. He thought about the camps and the killing fields and the long lines of refugees that no one wanted. He thought about every cry for help that had been ignored because helping was too hard, too costly, too risky. Humans had done these things to each other for thousands of years. And when humans had finally reached the stars, they had made one promise to themselves, quietly, in their hearts. Never again. Not on our watch. Kowalski turned from the window and walked to his desk. He pressed a small button. A door opened, and a woman walked in. Her name was Captain Mira Solano. She was tall and lean, with short black hair and sharp brown eyes. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Navy, with a single silver star on her collar. She saluted Kowalski crisply. Admiral. Sit down, Captain. She sat. He looked at her for a long moment. He had known Solano since she was a young officer, fresh out of the academy. He had watched her grow into one of the finest ship commanders in the fleet. She was smart, fast, and brave in the way that frightened other species. She did not flinch. You have read the Concorde report? He asked. Yes, sir. And what do you think of it? Solano was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think it is wrong, sir. 11 civilizations voted against helping. Civilizations far older and stronger than ours. They calculated that the Krell are too dangerous. They calculated that intervention would cost too many lives. They have thousands of years of wisdom that says we should stay out of this. Yes, sir. And what do you say? Solano lifted her chin. I say that 3 billion people are going to die, sir. And I say that no calculation in the universe is worth that. Kowalski almost smiled. Almost. He pressed another button on his desk. A holographic image bloomed in the air between them. It was a ship. A long, dark, angular vessel with brutal lines and a hull plated in black armor. It did not look like the elegant, polished ships of the older galactic civilizations. It looked like a hammer. It looked like something built by people who had spent a long time thinking about what worked and not about what looked nice. The Earth naval ship Prometheus Unbound, Kowalski said. Sovereign class, the newest warship in our fleet. Her engines can do things that the Concord engineers say are impossible. Her weapon systems are designed to adapt mid-battle. Her crew is the best we have. Solano stared at the hologram. She knew this ship. She had been training to command her for the last 8 months. You are her captain, Kowalski said. As of this moment, Solano's eyes widened slightly. Sir, I am giving you orders, Captain. But these orders are not on the official record. They will never be on the official record. If anything goes wrong, the government will say that you went rogue. They will say that you violated Concord neutrality. They will say that you are a criminal. He leaned forward. Do you understand? Solano sat very still. Then she said, Yes, sir, I understand. You will take the Prometheus Unbound and 2 escort frigates, the St. Joan and the Sundiata, on a routine training exercise in deep space. During this exercise, your navigation systems will malfunction. You will translate into slipspace and emerge in the Veltheria system. By the time you arrive, the Krell will probably have already begun their bombardment. You will face an enemy fleet of over 200 capital ships. You will be alone. There will be no reinforcements. There will be no rescue. He paused. You may all die, Captain. Solano did not move. Her face did not change. What are my objectives, sir? Kowalski looked at her with his glowing, pale blue eyes. Save as many as you can. Hurt the Krell as badly as you can. Show the galaxy what humans do when no one else will. Solano stood up. She saluted again, slowly and firmly. It will be done, sir. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back. Admiral, may I ask one question? Go ahead. If I am court-martialed for this, will you attend? Kowalski looked at her, and this time he did smile. It was a small, tired, fierce smile. Captain, I will sit in the front row, and I will applaud. She nodded once and walked out. 6 hours later, the Prometheus Unbound lifted off from her dock at Mars Naval Yards. The St. Joan and the Sundiata followed close behind. The 3 ships moved out past the orbit of Pluto, into the deep dark where no civilian vessels traveled. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Solano stood at the center of the command deck and looked at her crew. There were 847 souls aboard. Engineers, gunners, pilots, marines, medics, cooks, technicians. Most of them were young. Many of them had families. She activated the ship-wide communication system. This is the captain. We are going to a place called Veltheria Prime. The people there are dying. No one is coming to help them. So we are going. We may not come back. If you wish to refuse this mission, you may do so now, with no shame and no punishment. Speak now. She waited. The bridge was silent. The corridors were silent. The engine rooms were silent. No one spoke. Solano nodded slowly. Helm. Set course for Veltheria Prime. Slip space. Full burn. Course set, Captain. Punch it. The 3 small ships vanished into the dark, faster than light, carrying 847 human souls toward a battle they were not supposed to win. The shields of Veltheria Prime fell at sunset. The great golden dome of energy that had protected the planet for 6 weeks flickered one last time and then went out. From the council tower, Felix Vorn watched it die with a sound like 1,000 bells breaking. The sky above the capital was suddenly clear, a deep violet color streaked with pink clouds, and for one strange moment it was beautiful. Then the bombardment began. The first Krell lance struck the eastern edge of the city. A column of white fire, taller than any mountain, rose into the sky. Buildings melted. Roads turned to glass. Thousands of lives ended in a single heartbeat. The shockwave hit the council tower a few seconds later, rattling the windows and knocking dust from the ceiling. Felix gripped the edge of the communication table. Mistress Kavari was already moving toward the stairs that led down to the deep bunkers. "Ambassador, we must go. Now." Felix did not move. He stared at the burning sky. "Ambassador, the unknown ships," he said. "Where are they?" A young technician at the sensor station looked up with wide eyes. "They are still coming, Master. Very fast. They will reach the system in minutes." 3 ships, Felix said softly. "Against 200. "Yes, Master." Felix watched another lance strike the city. This one hit the Great Library, the place where his people had stored 10,000 years of poetry and music and history. The building burst apart in a flash of light. He felt something in his chest crack and break. "Take me to the bunker," he said. "But keep the sensors active. I want to see what comes." Mistress Kavari took his arm gently and led him toward the stairs. Far above the burning planet, in the cold black emptiness at the edge of the system, space itself tore open. The slipspace rupture was enormous. Krell sensor officers stared at their screens in confusion. They had never seen a slipspace exit signature so large, so violent, so loud. Whatever was coming through was either very big or very angry, or both. A ship emerged from the rupture. It was a single vessel, dark, angular, brutal in shape. Its hull was scarred and patched. It bore strange markings, in a script no Krell scholar recognized. Behind it came 2 smaller ships, escorts, equally dark and equally serious-looking. 3 ships. That was all. On the bridge of the Krell flagship Devourer of Worlds, Overlord Keseth Vrax studied the new arrivals with mild interest. He was a great crystalline being, 8 meters tall, his body humming with the cold light of his species. He had eaten the life from 12 worlds in his long career. He had crushed fleets 10 times the size of these 3 small ships. "Identify the intruders," he said. A subordinate hummed back. "Unknown configuration, my overlord. The vessels do not match any known Concord design. Cross-referencing. A possible match. The species call themselves humans. Earthborn. Recent arrivals to the galactic stage. Threat assessment. Minimal." Keseth Vrax made a sound that, in his species, was laughter. Then a voice came over every Krell communication channel. It was a woman's voice, calm and clear, speaking in perfect Krell. The voice did not shout. It did not threaten. It simply spoke. "This is the human warship Prometheus Unbound. You are committing genocide in violation of every law worth keeping. Withdraw from this system, or be destroyed. You have 90 seconds. The Krell bridge was silent for a moment. Then Keseth Vrax laughed again, louder this time. Around him, his officers joined in the laughter, their crystal bodies chiming with mirth. 90 seconds? Keseth Vrax said. 90 seconds? For 200 ships to flee from 3? He turned to his weapons officer. Destroy them. Make it quick. We have a world to harvest. The Krell fleet moved. 200 dreadnoughts turned their massive guns toward the small human formation. Crystalline lances charged with deadly energy. The Devourer of Worlds itself prepared its main weapon, a beam that could split moons. And then the humans did something strange. The Prometheus Unbound did not run. It did not try to retreat into slipspace. It did not even raise its main shields to full power. Instead, the ship dove forward, accelerating directly toward the Krell formation at full burn. The 2 escort frigates split off, peeling away to the left and right in wide arcs. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Mira Solano stood with her hands behind her back, watching the tactical display. Helm, hold course. Take us right between the 3rd and 4th dreadnought columns. Aye, Captain. Tactical. Launch the swarm. Aye, Captain. Swarm launching. From the belly of the Prometheus, Hundreds of small drones poured out into space. They were no bigger than a person, but each one was packed with weapons and intelligence. They spread out in a wide cloud, learning, adapting, watching. They had been programmed to study the enemy in real time and change their tactics every few seconds. Human engineers had spent the entire slipspace journey loading them with every scrap of captured Krell sensor data they could find. The drones found weak spots in the Krell armor that no Concorde weapon had ever found. The first Krell dreadnought died in less than a minute. A swarm of 40 drones found a small gap near its main reactor, slipped inside, and detonated. The crystalline ship cracked from the inside out, splitting into glittering pieces. On the Devourer's bridge, the laughter stopped. "What was that?" Kesseth Vrax demanded. "What did they do?" Before anyone could answer, the second dreadnought died. Then the third. The drones moved like a school of small fish, learning faster than the Krell could react. Every time the Krell adjusted their shields, the drones changed their attack pattern. Every time the Krell fired their lances, the drones scattered and reformed somewhere else. The Prometheus unbound itself dove deep into the heart of the Krell formation. Its guns spoke in voices the Krell did not understand. Its main cannons fired rounds that should not have worked against crystalline armor, but somehow did. Human engineers, during the long slipspace journey, had been quietly modifying every weapon on the ship, tuning each shell and each beam to crack the specific frequencies of Krell crystal. The St. Joan and the Sundiata, the two small escorts, did something else. They flew low over the planet itself, drawing fire away from the surface, and began coordinating evacuation routes. Human voices broadcast on Confederacy frequencies, calm and steady, telling refugee transports where to go, when to launch, how to stay alive. In the deep bunker beneath the burning capital, Felix Vorn sat before a small screen and watched it all. He did not understand what he was seeing. The humans were winning. Not easily. The Prometheus was already taking damage. One of its escort frigates was streaming atmosphere from a hull breach. But the Krell were dying faster than the humans were. 3 dreadnoughts had become 5. 5 had become 8. 8 had become 12. Mistress Kavari placed a trembling hand on Felix's shoulder. "Ambassador," she whispered. "They came." Felix could not speak. His 4 wings shook on his back. He had said his goodbyes. He had told 3 billion souls to die with dignity. He had not believed in mercy anymore. And now thunder rolled through the void above his world, and small dark ships fought a great cold empire on his behalf. And somehow, impossibly, his people were not dying after all. He bowed his head and wept. The battle above Veltheria Prime lasted 3 hours and 17 minutes. Across the galaxy, in quiet observation rooms and secret war colleges, the great civilizations of the Concorde watched the long-range telemetry with growing disbelief. Senior strategists who had studied warfare for centuries leaned forward in their seats and whispered to each other in low, troubled voices. None of them had ever seen anything like it. The humans were not following the rules. Krell warfare doctrine was old and well understood. The Krell fought in great formations, using their numbers to overwhelm any enemy. Concorde doctrine, in turn, was built around responding to the Krell with careful, measured force. Both sides assumed that their opponents were rational. Both sides assumed that any enemy who was outnumbered 50-1 would retreat. The humans did not retreat. When the Prometheus Unbound took a direct hit to its main reactor, plasma fires erupted across 3 of its decks. Standard Concorde doctrine said that a ship in such a state should withdraw immediately. Captain Mira Solano did not withdraw. Instead, she ordered the helm to ram a Krell command vessel. The Prometheus slammed into the smaller dreadnought at high speed, locking the 2 ships together in a tangle of broken metal and shattered crystal. Before the Krell crew could react, human marines were already pouring through the breach. Lieutenant Cade Okafor led the boarding party. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark skin and a quiet voice. He had served in the Earth Marines for 16 years. He had 2 daughters at home. He carried a heavy plasma cutter in his hands and led 20 Marines through the crystalline corridors of the Krell ship, fighting room by room. The Krell had not designed their ships for boarding actions. Their species did not believe in close combat. They fought from a distance, with great weapons and cold calculations. They did not know what to do when small, angry creatures came running through their corridors with breaching charges and cutting torches. Okafor's Marines reached the bridge in 12 minutes. The Krell commander tried to surrender. Okafor accepted, taking the surviving officers prisoner. Then he sat down at the Dreadnought's main console, and, with the help of a captured Krell technician who decided he would rather live than die for the Dominion, he turned the ship's weapons against its own fleet. The Krell formation began to break. Meanwhile, the two escort frigates were doing something the Concord observers found even more difficult to understand. The St. Joan and the Sundiata were not trying to win the battle. They were trying to save lives. The two small ships flew low over Veltheria Prime, weaving between Krell bombardment beams, drawing fire away from refugee transports. Confederacy evacuation ships had been hiding in the deep canyons of the planet, afraid to lift off because the moment they reached space, they would be killed. Now, with the human frigates running interference, they began to launch. The captain of the St. Joan was a young woman named Yuki Tanaka. She was 31 years old. She had been married for 2 years. Her ship took a direct hit from a Krell lance halfway through the battle, and the bridge was torn open to space. She stayed at her post, in her armored suit, and continued to coordinate the evacuation until her ship's reactor failed and the St. Joan went dark. She died at her post. Her crew kept fighting. They guided the last of the refugee transports into safe orbit before their ship broke apart. The Sundiata fared little better. Her captain, a man named Rashid Al-Fayed, lost his life in the second hour when a Krell boarding pod struck his bridge. His first officer took command and continued the screening action until the Sundiata could no longer fly. The crew that survived used escape pods. Many did not survive at all, but the refugee transports got through. By the end of the second hour, over 4 million civilians had been evacuated from the surface of Veltheria Prime to safe orbits where waiting Confederacy ships could collect them. By the end of the third hour, the number had grown to over 12 million. The human frigates had given their lives to make this possible. Above the planet, the Prometheus Unbound continued to fight. The ship was a wreck. 3 of her decks were vented to space. Half her gun batteries were silent. Her port engine was dead. Her hull was cratered with so many impact wounds that her armor plating looked like the surface of an old moon. 2/3 of her crew were dead or wounded. The medical bays were overflowing, but she still flew, and her main guns were still warm. Captain Solano stood on the bridge with blood running down the side of her face. A piece of shrapnel had cut her cheek open during one of the impacts. She had not noticed. Her left arm hung useless at her side, broken in 2 places. She had not noticed that either. She stood at the center of the command deck and gave orders in the same calm voice she had used at the start of the battle. Tactical. How many drones do we have left? 43 operational, Captain. Send them after the Devourer. I want that flagship dead. Aye, Captain. The 43 drones swarmed toward the Great Krell flagship. The Devourer of Worlds was the largest ship in the enemy fleet, the personal vessel of Overlord Keseth Vrax himself. Its shields were the strongest. Its weapons were the deadliest. It should have been impossible to harm. The drones found a weak point near the rear engine cluster. 20 of them slipped through the shield gap and detonated together. The Devourer of Worlds shook. A great crack ran along its hull. Inside its bridge, Overlord Keseth Vrax stared in horror as his ship began to die. He gave the order he had never given before in his long life. Retreat. All ships. Retreat from this system. Now. The remaining Krell fleet broke. What had begun as 200 dreadnoughts had been reduced to less than 90. The survivors fled into slipspace, scattering in every direction, their formations broken, their pride shattered. The Devourer of Worlds limped away last, trailing fire. The battle was over. In the deep bunker beneath the capital city, Felix Vorn lifted his head from his hands and stared at the sensor screen. The Krell were gone. Around him, the other leaders sat in stunned silence. Mistress Kavari was weeping openly. Outside the bunker, the city was burning, but it was not destroyed. Most of the planet was still alive. Most of his people were still alive. The humans had done it. Felix stood up slowly. He felt very old. He felt very young. He felt as if he were waking up from a long bad dream. "I must go to them," he said. "Ambassador," Mistress Kavari said. "It is not safe. The orbital paths are still full of debris. There may be Krell stragglers. I must go to them," Felix said again. "Prepare a shuttle." An hour later, his small craft lifted off from the ruined capital and rose through the smoke-filled sky. It climbed past the broken clouds and into the clean dark of space. Around him, debris floated everywhere. Pieces of Krell crystal, pieces of human metal, bodies. So many bodies. The Prometheus Unbound drifted in low orbit, scarred and silent. As his shuttle approached, Felix saw human work crews already moving along her hull, beginning repairs. The ship was alive. Damaged, but alive. Captain Mira Solano met him at the airlock. She had cleaned the blood from her face. Her broken arm was in a sling. She stood straight and saluted him. Felix Vorn, ambassador of a saved people, looked at this small, tired human woman who had flown across the galaxy to fight a war she had no obligation to fight. He did not know what to say, so he simply bowed, very low, the deepest bow his people had, and he held it for a long, long time. The Galactic Concord called its emergency tribunal 6 weeks after the Battle of Veltheria Prime. It was held on the great neutral station of Aldereth, a vast ring world that floated in deep space between the territories of the 12 founding civilizations. The tribunal chamber was the largest meeting hall in the known galaxy. Its ceiling was a dome of clear crystal, and above it the stars shone cold and bright. 12 great seats stood in a circle around a central floor. Each seat belonged to one of the founding species of the Concord. Humanity was not given a seat. Humanity was given a small podium in the center of the floor, where the accused stood. Admiral Ezra Kowalski walked to the podium first. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with silver trim, and his chest was heavy with medals he had earned over 43 years of service. His cybernetic eyes glowed softly in the bright chamber light. Beside him walked Captain Mira Solano. Her broken arm was healed, but her face still carried the scar from the shrapnel, a pale line across her cheek. She had lost weight. She had not slept well since the battle. The chief judge of the tribunal was a tall Sarek elder named Venerable Thoska. He was a reptilian creature with silver scales and cold, patient eyes. He rose slowly from his seat and spoke in a voice that filled the great chamber. Humanity stands accused of 3 great crimes. First, violation of Concord neutrality protocols. Second, unauthorized military action against a recognized galactic power. Third, destabilization of regional balance of power in a manner that threatens the peace of all civilized species. How do you answer these charges? Kowalski stepped forward. He did not look afraid. He looked tired and old and ready. "The charges are true," he said simply. A low murmur ran through the chamber. The 12 great judges shifted in their seats. "We violated your protocols," Kowalski continued. "We took military action that you did not approve. We have changed the balance of power in a way that some of you find frightening. All of this is true. I do not deny it. Captain Solano does not deny it. The government of Earth does not deny it." He paused. "We are not sorry." The murmur grew louder. Venerable Thoska raised a scaly hand for silence. "Admiral Kowalski, do you understand that the penalties for these crimes include expulsion from the Concord, economic sanctions that could cripple your world for generations, and possible military action against Earth itself?" "I understand. And you stand by your statement?" "I do." Venerable Thoska looked at the other judges. Some of them were nodding. Some were already preparing to speak. The mood in the chamber was hard and cold. The decision was going to go badly for humanity. Then the great doors at the far end of the chamber opened. A small procession walked in. At its head was Ambassador Felix Vorn. He was dressed in the traditional robes of his people, and his 4 wings had been cleaned and polished until they shone like silver and blue flame. Behind him walked representatives of all 6 Veltharian species, the avian and the insectoid peoples who had been saved from extinction. They had not been invited to this tribunal. They had come anyway. The chamber fell silent. Venerable Thoska frowned. Ambassador Vorn, this is a closed tribunal. You have no standing to speak here. Felix walked slowly forward. He did not stop until he was standing beside Kowalski and Solano on the central floor. He turned to face the 12 great judges. I have standing, he said quietly, because I am alive. My people are alive. We were not supposed to be alive. We were supposed to be dead. 3 billion of us. You voted for that. You sat in seats much like these, and you calculated that our lives were not worth the cost of saving. You did the math, and the math said we should die. He paused. His voice was soft, but very steady. I am not angry with you. I was angry, for a little while, but I am too tired to be angry now. I am only sad. I am sad because you are the great civilizations of the galaxy, and you could not find it in your hearts to come when we called. I am sad because wisdom without mercy is not wisdom at all. It is only cleverness, dressed up in fine clothes. He turned slightly and looked at Kowalski and Solano. These humans came. They did not ask for permission. They did not count the cost. They did not wait for the vote to turn in our favor. They simply came. 847 of them flew into a battle they were not supposed to win. Over 300 of them died. They died for a people they had never met, on a world they had never seen, because they believed that our lives mattered. He turned back to the judges. You wish to punish them for this. You wish to expel them from your great alliance. You wish to call them criminals because they did what you would not do. So I ask you now, in the open, before all the stars are watching, which of you deserves to sit in judgment of them? Which of you has the right? The chamber was silent. Felix Vorn lifted his head. Punish them if you must. My people will not forget. And when the next cry for help comes, and the Concord votes again to let a world die, we will remember who came and who did not. He fell silent. He waited. For a long moment, no one in the chamber spoke. Then, one by one, small things began to happen. The ambassador of the Tsaric Republic sat back slowly in his seat and lowered his eyes. The ambassador of the Volnari Imperium looked at Kowalski for a long moment, and then looked away. The ambassador of the Quilkai Federation placed a trembling hand over her face. The vote, when it was finally called, did not go the way Venerable Thoska had expected. 7 judges voted to censure humanity. 5 judges voted against censure. The motion failed. More than that, in the days that followed, something strange and new began to happen across the galaxy. 3 small species, watching the tribunal from their distant worlds, quietly sent messages to Earth. They asked if they could join a new alliance. An alliance built not around careful calculation, but around the stubborn, strange belief that when someone cried for help, someone should come. Within a year, the alliance had 12 members. Within 5 years, it had 30. Humanity, which had only been flying among the stars for 2 centuries, found itself at the heart of a new galactic order. Not a conquering power, not an empire, simply a coalition of peoples who had decided, together, that they would be the thunder in the void when the cries came. Many months later, a new ship stood at dock in the rebuilt shipyards above Earth. Her name was the Prometheus Unbound II. She was larger than her mother ship, and stronger, and faster. Her bridge was staffed by crews from 12 different species. On her command deck stood Captain Mira Solano, promoted now to Commodore, and beside her stood a tall, 4-winged figure in the uniform of a liaison officer. Felix Vorn had left the diplomatic service. He had asked to serve on human ships, learning the ways of these strange, stubborn creatures who had saved his world. His feathers had grown bright again, shining in the light of the bridge displays. He turned to Solano and asked a question he had been carrying for a long time. Commodore, I have watched your people for many years now, and I have seen something I do not understand. When there is a fire, or a battle, or a cry for help, your species runs toward it, not away. Why? What is wrong with you? Solano smiled. It was a small, tired, real smile. She looked out at the stars beyond the viewport, at the great dark void that held so many worlds and so many cries waiting to be heard. "Felix," she said. "Someone has to." The Prometheus unbound, second, lit her engines, and turned her nose toward the deep dark. Behind her, a fleet of mixed-species vessels followed in formation. Their orders were simple. Their orders would never change. Patrol the dark places. Answer the cries that go unanswered. Be the thunder in the void.